When Andor was announced, I wasn't too keen on it. I'm not sure why, but I think it's because I couldn't see what Cassian's character could be. I didn't see how complex it would become. I loved Rogue One, and it's probably one of my most watched Star Wars films. Seeing the grounded elements in the sci-fi fantastical universe makes the world better, and seeing Andor with the grounded elements of Star Wars made this the best Star Wars show ever made. So what makes Andor the best show? As I said, being grounded. Star Wars is known for its epic space opera setting and storytelling. Fantastical elements like Jedi and Sith play a huge role in changing the fate of the galaxy, the myths of the Chosen One. It's all good, that's what Star Wars is known for, but we tend to forget that other side of the coin, the dirty, gritty side of the universe. In each trilogy, we focus on the main characters as they go on this chaotic journey to fight evil. We see these amazing space battles, epic battles of Jedi and Sith, stuff that makes you stare in awe. When you focus on the trilogies, the prequels, originals, and the sequels, it's a small thing. Looking at A New Hope, Luke goes from being a farm boy on Tatooine to being a rebel pilot that blew up the Death Star, and then being the chosen one that brings balance to the Force. Yeah, that's all fun and dandy. We like Luke and his friends' story from beginning to end, but we forget the ones who make the change happen for those characters to be where they are. Andor is that element. It's about the ones that pave the way for the main characters. Andor follows Cassian Andor as he slowly ingrains himself with the rebels, becoming a rebel spy. This 2-season series is, in my eyes, one of the best pieces of written media. While we watch in awe of space battles and Jedi and Sith, Andor's story stands out because of the opposite reason. It's not about the Jedi and Sith. There are no giant climactic space battles. I like to see it's the darker side to hope. In Rogue One, Jyn says rebellions are built on hope. In Andor, we see the gritty side to that, the sacrifices people make just so they and posterity have a better future. The big theme of Andor is sacrifice. Luthen Rael's speech in Season 1 is one of the best monologues I've heard, because when there's a revolution against established order, we forget how much people throw away to be part of the movement. He shares his dreams with ghosts and fights for a sunrise he'll never see. He sacrifices who he is and what he stands for future generations. There's no audience to celebrate what he does, not like Luke and company who get celebrated and treated as heroes. Luthen dies in the dark. He'll fight and fight and fight and die, but he dies on his own terms, knowing there's a rebellion out there, everywhere. As he says to Dedra, there's a whole galaxy waiting to disgust you. The other big speech of Andor was Mon Mothma's speech in the Senate before she leaves for the rebellion. She speaks about how far we've fallen with the distance between what is said and the actual truth. The Gorman massacre, the real spark of the rebellion, that truth was not in the Senate. And the Gorman massacre, as she said, it was an unprovoked genocide. Gorman protesters were massacred, all for voicing their own thoughts, which obviously the Empire hates. Nemik's manifesto talks about the struggle for freedom, the random acts of insurrection that pushes the line forward. The Imperial need for control is unnatural, and because of that, tyranny and authority is brittle. As he said, it leaks. Oppression is the mask of fear. The Empire is so scared of anyone trying to break free, they'll do anything to stop it. Andor shows the enormity of the rebellion. In the original films and in the animated Star Wars show Star Wars Rebels, the rebels we see is just one big cell, the Rebel Alliance to restore the Republic. There are other cells of rebels that are fighting for their freedoms. Saw's rant at Luthen puts that into perspective. Sectorists, galaxy partitionists, and human cultists. There's a wider rebellion that we don't see. That's what makes this rebellion in Andor feel so real, is the scale of it. We forget about the unseen parts, and we're so focused on one group like in Rebels in the original trilogy, we forget there's a whole load of other people fighting the Empire.
Any further erosion in local authority may require an increase in our Black Line budget.
And where would you target these new resources, Supervisor Grandy?
Increased surveillance, sir.
Looking for what?
Anti-imperial activity, as always.
To shift focus on the Empire, this is the one time where the Empire is scary. Disney tries so hard to make them like cartoon villains, and it felt like that with the First Order in the sequels, and in some of the other Disney-era Star Wars shows and films, they're seen as incompetent. Stormtroopers are just another faceless enemy that we gloss over, because the writers treat them as dummies. Rogue One and Andor show the competence of the Empire. We see the inner workings and bureaucracy of it, and how the ISB operates with controlling information and acting as the Empire's secret police force. The Empire of Andor is a reflection into real-world authoritarian states. The information control, mass surveillance, the cold brutality. Rather than stormtroopers, for the most part we get Imperial Army troopers, the actual main body of the Empire, conscripts and volunteers across the world under Imperial rule. One of the very few times we see stormtroopers in action is when shit gets real, like the Gorman massacre, so when we see any appearance of stormtroopers, we know that whatever the situation is quite serious. and only in the show do we see actual competent villains. Leo Partagaz, the ISB superior, is an actual well-written villain, doing what he can to stop the rebels, working within the boundaries with what he can, and he's not like Darth Vader who'd kill any officers for failing. He'd be cold, but it was like a tough love thing for his pupils. Partagaz's rule in the Empire show how competent an Empire would be if there was no Palpatine, Darth Vader or Tarkin. The ideology of the Sith corrupted the Empire from the start. Officers backstab each other and gain more favour and higher ranking, some just want the glory. Andor's Empire shows what could have been the cold, ruthless, oppressive surveillance state. In the ISB meeting scenes, they treat the rebellion like a disease. They see themselves as doctors and healthcare providers. The cold, clinical authority the ISB have reinforces the coldness of an authoritarian system. The scene which reinforces the power of the Empire and the ISB is Partagaz's death. Once he tells Legret to leave, there's no dialogue exchange with anyone. Partagaz sits himself down and shoots himself. We'd watch this from Legret's point of view. He stands outside staring down the two stormtroopers, and when they hear the blaster go off, Legret calmly gestures with his hand. This one scene shows the power and the cold authority of the ISB. It's calm and cold and heartless. Though at the core of the show, Andor is about a revolution against oppressiveness, tyranny and control. As much as I said Partagaz is a good villain, he's not the main villain in a traditional sense. There is no main villain. Most stories consist of a hero fighting a villain to win, like Luke and Darth Vader. But in Andor, the villain is the whole Empire itself, not just one or multiple persons. That's why the war feels real and grounded. Like most revolutions, it's against the established order as much as it is against the ruler. People start revolutions because the rules of the order are unjust. They'll lose and lose until they win. So why does Andor stand out? Because it takes itself seriously.